Good evening. It's Saturday, July 4th, 7:44 p.m. World Omnibus has reset. I got caught up in a conversation earlier. I've turned the record now. So, an important announcement: we can no longer rely on worldometers. We never could really before, but it's worse now than it is before. Because look at these inconsistencies. France didn't report. Spain didn't report. Netherlands didn't report. Sweden didn't report. China is obviously lying. And today's number is, it's the weekend, and they're still really high. 189K today. The most being USA, second Brazil. The deaths don't make sense. At least highest death was Brazil. In Brazil's defense, people might not be as healthy there. There might be a lot of poor areas that leave the bodies very vulnerable. That might have led to that number. But we'll get to why the USA has such low numbers. So we'll go to state-wise when it comes to the USA. By the way, the fireworks they're popping, man. I'm in LA, and it's just explosions all over the place. Cars going off, dogs running out of their backyards, birds flying everywhere. And the worst part is that, well, I'll talk about that later because I went for a cruise and saw a few things. So today we got Florida breaking the record in state cases, 11K. And if we look at total deaths, Connecticut didn't report, Louisiana didn't report, Minnesota didn't report, Rhode Island didn't report, and they haven't been. Kentucky didn't report, New Hampshire didn't report. Like I said, you can't trust. It's so inconsistent now. You just can't trust it. We don't know anymore what's happening. All we know that it's getting so bad. Countries and states are covering it up, and it gets even worse when you look at LA. Let's go to California. So, as I said yesterday, LA is not reporting anything till July 6th. That's why they're blank for yesterday or today, I suppose. So Riverside takes the lead in cases. Imperial County takes the lead in deaths. And Imperial's overflow. They're sending patients to other counties. They can't help nobody anymore. And look at all these counties that they didn't report. LA is blowing up in the not reporting. I already talked about what that meant yesterday. San Diego joined that today as another major county that everybody's looking at that is not reporting for a couple of days. How convenient it does this July 4th weekend. So we're out of the loop. We don't know what's happening. There's a lot of cover-ups going around. People aren't reporting honestly. Looking at the graphs worldwide, they're changing. We never had a first wave as a people. Our first wave is barely starting. And it's this bad already. And the Spanish flu had a devastating second wave. We can't even trust deaths. If we were to calculate deaths and put in all the excess deaths that has gone on this year, this chart should be going straight up. We are still in the beginning stages of this pandemic. I am convinced now that because people did not want to listen, it's gonna go on for years. So if you quit your job because you were scared, it's time to get rehired because we're in for the long haul. Here's today's news. Let's see. Mexico logs 6,740 new coronavirus cases, passes Italy's total. Mexico has passed Italy. Big red flag that Italy is not reporting. Big red flag. Authorities in Mexico have decided to close the country's Sonora border with Arizona, where new COVID-19 cases are surging at an alarming rate. This weekend, the Arizona Daily Star reported in order to prevent a flood of U.S. tourists headed to Mexican beaches for the holiday. Isn't that ironic that Trump wanted to build the wall, keep the immigrants out, and now the Mexicans have used the wall against them? Irony with this one. Corona Chan kills a convicted serial killer in prison. Scott Erskine dies while on death row due to COVID-19. Erskine was sentenced to death in San Diego County on September 1st, 2004 for the first-degree murders of the two boys. Since then, there have been more cases of people dying on death row from the virus. So justice is being served earlier than expected. Las Vegas teenager shares her harrowing virus experience. I never thought it would happen to me, Katie Asher told 8 News Now, until it did. 16-year-old Asher has truly been to hell and back since she was diagnosed with the virus on June 22nd. She and her family shared that she's been admitted to the intensive care unit twice, where she received a myriad of medications and breathing treatments. There are times where I was like, I don't know if my body can get through this. In the ICU, it was like taking 2 minutes to sit up in the hospital for them to fix something, give me medicine, or just go to the bathroom. You can be very healthy like me and never get the flu and never be sick and still struggle during this time. She was back home on Wednesday, but said doctors told her it could be up to 6 weeks before she starts to feel normal again. Seven-time NASCAR Cup Series champion Jimmy Johnson has tested positive for the virus and will miss Sunday's race in Indianapolis, according to his team, Hendrick Motorsports. Now, I've heard that saying the name of the virus can get you taken out of algorithms or censored. So I'm looking for alternatives than saying the name, That's why I'm saying virus. Washington. Patrons of Orchard's Tap Bar and Grill are being advised to immediately seek testing for COVID-19 after an outbreak of at least 18 confirmed cases among employees and customers. Now, the USA, as well as the world, is seeing mass outbreaks of infections in restaurants, bars, grills. Today, the UK opened up the pubs. And the people stormed the pubs. A lot of old people too, and they're not wearing masks. So even though Europe is showing good numbers, I think they might be the first to begin a skyrocket in deaths before anybody else. And again, this all ties back to alcoholism. These people just couldn't keep it in when it comes to alcohol. It's shameful. Missouri. According to St. Joseph City officials and employees at Triumph Foods, a second worker at the meat packing plant has died from coronavirus. Our meat packers are dying. They're dying and they're getting infected in the thousands. What does this mean? There's going to be a food shortage at this point if things do not get better. Things will get worse in the fall. People will panic buy for food and there won't be any to buy at this point if things do not get better. India, 51 books for playing cricket amid the pandemic. Now that's just, there's a lot of stories in India that are just outright hilarious and pathetic, and this is one of them. India has been hit very hard, and if people want to go out and play cricket and get booked in the dozens. So, speechless. Australia's Victoria reports 108 new coronavirus cases, biggest jump since March. So Australia has gone back in a hard lockdown due to these new cases. I think they were traced through a super spreading event. So here's a country that was hailed for their response, and we're hearing it all too often that they're beginning to succumb to it again. It's happening all over again. I'm sorry if you hear a lot of pops. There's a lot of fireworks going on behind me. Sydney routers. Australia's second most populous state, Victoria, reported its biggest jump in coronavirus in cases since late March on Saturday, forcing the expansion of stay-at-home orders to more Melbourne suburbs in the complete lockdown of 9 public housing towers. California. San Diego County was placed on the state's pandemic monitoring list Friday afternoon, which could lead to closures or new restrictions on businesses following the 4th of July weekend. Michigan Salt Fitness Club identified as possible COVID-19 exposure site. Anyone who was in the club in the early morning hours between June 22nd and July 3rd may have been asked to monitor of symptoms and contact. Anyone who was in the club in the early morning hours between June 22nd and July 3rd have been asked to monitor of symptoms and contact the health department. So people who want to go to the gyms, who want to go to the fitness clubs, like I've said before, this virus spreads universally. Virtually anything that you can do can get you infected if you're not careful. Florida. 9 Tallahassee Memorial Healthcare employees test positive for COVID-19. So in this hospital, 9 of the workers tested positive, and it turns out they were super spreading. And this is just the beginning of the damage. Australia's Or that's a repeat. All right. Oh, here's some more news. France's former PM and two other officials investigated over coronavirus handling. Announcement came just hours after he resigned from his post, accused of failing to fight disaster in a case opened by the Court of Justice of the Republic, CJR, the only French court that can judge government members over their actions while in office. Philippe could face up to 2 years in prison plus fines if he is convicted. France's Health Minister Olivier Véran and his predecessor Agnès Buzyn, who had stepped down in February to run as Paris mayor, are being investigated too. I think that almost every single PM and health minister in the world should be investigated. France just happens to be the first. The case was opened after COVID-19 patients, doctors, prison personnel, police officers, and others have filed an unprecedented 90 complaints to the Court of Justice of the Republic from mid-March, notably over shortages of masks and other equipment. France has reported the fifth highest number of coronavirus deaths worldwide, over 29,800. And according to this investigation, it is significantly higher than that. Significantly higher than that. Now here's some more news from the Ask the God of Death. Brazilian President Bolsonaro vetoes law requiring masks in public spaces. The law approved by Congress on June 9th stipulates fines for those who do not wear masks in public places. But this part was vetoed by Bolsonaro, who on Friday argued that it may violate the rights of those meeting in their homes for businesses or other purposes, reports Xinhua News Agency. So he's learning from the anti-lockdown protests in America. That's incredible. The president also vetoed a paragraph that obligated the government to provide masks to economically vulnerable sectors of the population, as well as a clause requiring companies to provide free masks to employees. Last month, a judge ordered the president to wear a mask in public, something he has often refused to do, the BBC reported. However, the order was later rescinded by another court. Bolsonaro has insisted that quarantine and social distancing are not necessary to combat the coronavirus and will only damage the fragile Brazilian economy. What is this man up to? This man is genociding his own people. There is something going on behind the scenes that I would really like to know as to why he's taking that attitude. Lockdown ordered for 200,000 in northeastern Spain due to COVID outbreaks. I am not surprised this happened. They played it off really well for 2 or 3 weeks where they had no deaths and very few cases because they wanted the tourists to come back in. And now that the tourists are back in, and now that they have spent their money, they're now letting out all the backlogs, letting out all the more accurate numbers because they're still not being honest. Now they're going back into lockdown. And there was a paper that came out that I talked about where supposedly it was in their waters early last year. It's not peer-reviewed. I won't consider it till it's peer-reviewed. Until then, it's an excuse for China to blame the outbreak on Spain and themselves when it is outright China's fault. First known U.S. coronavirus victim suffered burst heart. Now, this is an old story. The California woman who was the first known COVID-19 victim in the U.S. died from a burst heart when her own body turned against her as it tried to rid itself of the bug, according to a report. Patricia Down, 57, was under such assault from the virus that a valve in her heart ruptured, causing her to die February 6 at her San Jose home, the American News reported. Now, autopsies are not easy to come by, because a lot of people who do the autopsies are afraid to do them, and because they require the family to be all right with it. So COVID autopsies are not easy to come by. But this is a very concerning report that the virus can make your heart burst. If it can make your heart burst, just imagine what else could burst. LAPD senior detention officer dies from COVID-19, marking the agency's first coronavirus deaths. So first, LAPD cop died today from the virus. There'll be many more to come. This is just the beginning. In New York, I know hundreds of officers and cops got it, but they never did a follow-up to see what the aftermath was. And with LA now not reporting for days on end, no one's going to know. National Park Service staffers who worked the 4th of July celebration headlined by President Trump at Mount Rushmore on Friday were not required to get coronavirus tests ahead of the event. I think this happened because from the Tulsa rally, where staffers were caught to test positive. They wanted to evade that this time, but by just not testing anybody. Obvious cover up because Trump doesn't want to look bad for the election. He's too arrogant to admit that he was wrong. It couldn't be contained. And because he's a genocidal maniac, and because he wants to keep the economy going, that just represents why him and Mike Pence, who deserves to be smacked, are saying the extreme opposite of what reality is. And yet, his millions of devoted followers are going to believe him and fall for it. 31 Major League Baseball players and 7 staff members tested positive for the virus during intake for the resumption of training, at a rate of 1.2%. NBA is doomed. Major League Baseball is doomed. UFC is doomed. It's everywhere. Can't contain it. That shouldn't be there. Let me see. Mexico now has the world's 6th deadliest outbreak, passing Spain. That shouldn't be true. Spain just stopped reporting. But Mexico is pretty bad, and I haven't really seen much coming out of Mexico in terms of articles. I'm going to have to dig into that. The virus cases are rising in 40 out of 50 U.S. states. Experts say the 4th of July holiday will make it worse. I know it'll make it worse. I took a cruise today in LA County. The fireworks stands were packed. There were many sold out. The ones that were open had porta potties, which I have no idea why they would do something like that, because that can spread the virus. I drove by the beach. Beaches were closed. Parking lots were closed in LA. Keep in mind, not in San Diego. And there were lots of white people, many with no masks, bicycling and hanging out in downtown Hermosa, downtown Redondo, downtown Manhattan. And yet these cities have very low reported numbers. So, like I said before, I don't trust official numbers. There's no point. They are way off reality. They control the narrative. All I can tell you is that this is a potentially world-ending virus. And we will not know the truth from this point forward. So just Godspeed, all of you. Take care. Protect yourselves. Protect the others. If only you knew how bad things really were. San Diego City says not given enough notice from state to close July 4th beach parking. There was no point to closing any of the beaches in and around the county because now everyone's going to San Diego. So what was the point of closing all the beaches in LA County in California if you keep San Diego open? Because now everybody's going to go to San Diego. So now you took a bunch of different beaches that could have at least kept the density spread, all concentrate by everybody going to San Diego. Up to 8,000 Chinese nationals came into U.S. after Trump banned travel due to coronavirus. Now, I love this one because this man bragged about it for months on end, that he locked down China, that he locked down the flights, that he protected American lives. So look at this. Trump bragged he had cut off China travel for months, and it turns out they were still coming in. More than 600 flights brought in travelers from these areas after Trump announced his travel ban in late January, and it was enacted February 2nd. Travelers from Hong Kong and Macau also did not face the same scrutiny or screening processes as Americans or any foreign nationals coming in to the U.S. after having been in Wuhan, where the coronavirus outbreak started. There is no sufficient evidence to show people from these flights transmitted the coronavirus. But the National Security Council, the State Department, and the CDC, and the Department of Health and Human Services would not publicly comment on why these territories were exempt from the China travel ban. Of course not, if you aren't testing them. It's obvious. One administration official told the AP, Associated Press, that the travel ban was instated after more than 12,000 people arrived in the U.S. through 2 territories in January, according to Commerce records. The Trump administration said it would also require any Americans who have traveled through China and back into the U.S. to undergo a 14-day quarantine period. But according to data that was meant to track and monitor the people undergoing quarantine, lost track of at least 1,600 Americans. 1,600. In a tweet last week, the president said, "We did a great job on coronavirus." including the very early ban on China. We saved millions of U.S. lives, yet the fake news refuses to acknowledge this in a positive way, he added. The cases from Macau were later linked directly to Wuhan, the origin of the outbreak. Hong Kong has since banned all travelers from the U.S. My patience is running thin. This is getting worse and worse. I don't know what's gonna happen. I fear for the world. I fear for the country. I fear for my family. I fear for myself. But I'll be here as long as I can to keep reporting. I'll see you tomorrow.